Check our brakes. Brakes are good.
The mission for this day was to fly solo to Hamilton Airport. It was to be my 3rd hour soloing and my first solo flight to another airport. Getting into Hamilton and working in the pattern there is vital to my training. My home airport is a towered Class D with a 12,000 foot runway that's 200 feet wide. Hamilton is an untowered Class E with a 5,300 foot runway that's only 75 feet wide. Compared to what I'm used to seeing while on final at my home airport, Hamilton's runway looks like a postage stamp. And Hamilton is surrounded by rolling hills instead of the relatively flat area around my home airport. Working in Hamilton's airspace will give me the skills I need to fly to the places I want to visit, and it's easy to understand why my instructor wants me to spend time there.
Griffiths Tower, Archer 4172 Zulu, holding short, runway 33, ready for takeoff.
Archer 4172 Zulu, runway 33, clear for takeoff. After departure, you can proceed on course.
When I got my clearance to take off, I started moving onto the runway and glanced at the windsock. Earlier it was mainly blowing down the runway, and now it was blowing across it. My CFI has placed a 6-knot crosswind limitation on me during solos, and I was concerned the wind had increased since the last ATIS update. I slowed and asked the tower for a wind check. I did some quick math in my head, and the wind was fine, just under my limit, so I proceeded.
Current wind's 2307.
2307, thank you. Okay, so that is, we should be okay with that. Alright, we have runway 33 on the pavement. We have 33 on the HSI and our compass. Alright, let's make sure we got that. Alright, here we go. Make sure we get our right rudder in here. Making power. Engine instruments look good. Alright, coming up. Got right rudder in. That's good, you did it. Alright.
Takeoff went okay, but I needed more right rudder, as I usually do. But the winds. I was getting buffeted around quite a bit. I told myself, as I always do, that it's just waves in the air like driving a boat on a choppy lake. But I had not experienced it like this before. It wasn't terrible, but it was sustained, and I felt I was constantly fighting the plane. I was getting tossed side to side and up and down. At one point, I remember the plane gaining a couple 100 feet on its own in a matter of seconds. It was very unnerving, and all I could think about were the winds swirling around those hills at what was, to me, that tiny airport in Hamilton.
Alright, let's see if I can get the weather over there.
Weather, wind, 350 at 11, visibility 10, clear, below 12,000, temperature 19. So.
Okay, so the winds at Hamilton are probably too high for me to land in. So I think we're just going to fly down there and fly back. See what we can do at Griffiths.
The wind was right down the runway, but at 11 knots. And I know with the hills there, the winds create these updrafts, downdrafts, and I've flown in them before with my instructor, and they're challenging to say the least. And I just didn't feel I was ready. I was going to fly into Hamilton's airspace and overfly the runway, but I abandoned my intention to land. When I turned around and picked flight following back up, I started to doubt my decision. Was I not challenging myself enough? How would I be able to learn if I remained in my comfort zone? Would my instructor be disappointed? But the flight felt off from the very beginning. The weather was right at my limits. I never really once felt ahead of the aircraft. I felt the plane was flying me instead of me flying the plane. At the point I turned back, I just didn't want to be in the air. I wanted to get back home, land safely, and try again another time. I am driven to succeed at things I'm passionate about, and I am passionate about flying. In the moment, every mistake feels like a failure. Every struggle is something I should have been prepared for. Every failed mission is a disappointment to my instructor in my head. When I get away from the moment, I know that I have become a little bit of a better pilot by going through whatever it was I went through. I've experienced something new and I've learned something. Even though I was disappointed in myself, I knew I made the right decision. Aeronautical decision making, or ADM, is arguably one of the most crucial skills you learn as a pilot. I was 20 hours in when I flew this flight. I wasn't ready to tackle the turbulence, the first solo into an untowered airport, the much smaller runway, and the expected swirling winds on approach, all at the same time. I made the right decision.
Alright, that was ugly.
When I taxi back to the hangar after a flight, I tend to mentally review everything I'd done wrong and beat myself up. That's just my way and my process. I think that's because when I walk towards the hangar before my flights, I feel this palpable weight of responsibility. It's primarily the responsibility to my family to come home, but also to the plane owner to not damage his plane, and to anybody on the ground who could be affected by my mistakes. Like many pilots, I am my own worst critic, but when I walk away from the hangar and begin the drive home, the mental flogging turns into an analysis of the conditions, decisions, mistakes, and outcomes. That in turn becomes an opportunity to learn and improve, so even a failed mission can make me a better pilot. And that's all the success I really need in any flight I take.